In the dark shadows of the arena, a small group of believers held hands, their quiet prayers rising above the roar of a wild crowd. This was the chilling reality of the 2nd century Roman Empire, where holding on to faith meant stepping into the jaws of death. Behind the grand marble pillars, the empire was a brutal machine. It was built to crush anyone who dared to worship a different king. The air in the city streets was thick with fear. Roman soldiers stood on every corner, their swords ready to silence any voice that challenged their rule. To the leaders of this empire, a new thought was as dangerous as an attacking army. If you did not bow to the stone gods of the state, you were marked as a threat that had to be wiped out. Because of this constant danger, the early Christian church had to become a secret world, hidden deep underground. Believers could not gather in open squares. Instead, they crept through dark alleys at night, meeting in locked rooms. They shared their meals in hushed whispers, always listening for the heavy boots of guards outside the door. The empire hated what it could not understand, so it spread terrifying lies about these hidden meetings. Roman leaders told the public that these secret believers were actual monsters. They spread dark rumors that they ate human flesh and plotted to burn the cities. In this twisted system, simply being called a Christian was an instant crime, a label carrying a death sentence. Far away from those hidden rooms, a young man named Justin was fighting a different battle in his own mind. He was a restless seeker, wandering through famous schools of the ancient world, desperate for real answers. He spent his days reading thick scrolls and listening to proud teachers, but his heart remained empty. Every new idea turned out to be a dead end. A heavy loneliness settled over Justin as he realized none of these men knew the truth. Some teachers only cared about taking his money, while others just wanted to sound smart. His brilliant mind was starving for meaning in a world that felt completely dark. He was looking for a reason to live, but all the great thinkers could only offer hollow words. The turning point came on a quiet, lonely beach, far away from the noisy city crowds. Justin was walking alone by the crashing waves, lost in his gloomy thoughts, when he crossed paths with a mysterious old man. This stranger did not act like the proud teachers. With a gentle voice, the old man asked simple, unsettling questions that pierced through his clever arguments. One by one, the old man gently tore down the proud logic Justin had spent years building. He did not offer another empty idea, but instead pointed the young man toward the ancient prophets and the true story of Jesus. That single conversation on the sand changed the entire course of his life. The heavy fog in his mind lifted, and he saw a truth worth dying for. Justin made a choice that shocked everyone who knew him. He fully embraced the faith, but instead of hiding in the shadows, he kept wearing the special robe of a philosopher. This piece of clothing was a very loud, public statement. It showed the world that he was not throwing away his mind, but using it to mount a bold philosophical defense of his new beliefs. He did the unthinkable and moved straight to Rome, the very belly of the beast, to open a new school. He was no longer a wandering student. He became a visible target, ready to use apologetics to explain his faith to anyone who would listen. By stepping into the light, this brave teacher focuses our attention on the ultimate cost of truth, setting himself on a direct path toward his own martyrdom, becoming a true martyr. In the heart of the Roman Empire, Justin picked up a dangerous new tool. He called it Christian apologetics today. That word sounds like saying you are sorry, but back then it meant the exact opposite. It was a fierce, highly risky defense strategy used in a war of ideas. Justin used pure logic and sharp reason as weapons against the thick web of lies spun by the state. The empire was built on fear, spreading dark rumors that early believers were monsters who ate people and hated the world. Justin took those terrifying stories head-on. He stood in the public squares and used his mind to tear down the fake news of his day. Every time he spoke up to defend his people, he was painting a bigger target on his own back. The danger reached a chilling new level when Justin wrote a document known as his first apology. He wrote a philosophical defense directly to the Roman Emperor, Antoninus Pius. He did not write this to his friends or hidden believers. He sent it to the most powerful and dangerous man on earth. This was an act of stunning, almost crazy boldness. It was exactly like a wanted man walking straight into the main police station, looking the chief in the eye and telling him his laws were completely wrong. Justin demanded that the emperor stop killing innocent people just because of their name. The sheer terror of putting his own name on that letter meant he could be hunted down and killed at any moment. To make the emperor listen, Justin had to explain Jesus to a deeply hostile world. He used a very simple idea that Roman thinkers already loved. They believed in a great ultimate truth that held the whole universe together. Justin boldly told them that this grand truth was not just an idea, but a real person who became a human being. Then he took his philosophical defense a step further, crossing a very dangerous line. He looked at the beautiful statues of the Roman gods that filled the city and told the empire a dark secret. He claimed those beloved gods were actually dark, evil spirits, tricking the people into worshipping demons. Saying this out loud in Rome was a direct insult to the state, a crime that usually ended in death. His fight for the truth did not stop with the Romans. Justin also entered into deep, long talks with religious scholars, which he wrote down in his other major work, The Dialogue with Trypho. He did not just fight the empire. He debated these scholars to prove that Jesus was the promised savior the ancient writings had pointed to all along. This was not a friendly chat over dinner. It was a high-stakes intellectual battle that lasted for days. Justin worked tirelessly, searching through old scrolls and connecting the dots of history. It was a lifelong effort to show that his faith was built on a solid rock of evidence, not just blind hope, but making loud noise in a city of shadows always attracts the wrong kind of attention. A creeping, unsettling threat began to shadow Justin's every move. A rival thinker named Crescens grew deeply jealous of Justin's sharp mind and growing crowd of students. Crescens hated him with a dark, bitter passion and wanted him silenced permanently. The air around Justin grew thick with dread. He lived with the chilling psychological reality of having a target painted on his chest. Every time he walked down the narrow stone streets, he knew spies were watching and jealous enemies were plotting his ruin. The walls were closing in, and the deadly trap of the Roman Empire was finally set to spring. The heavy door broke open with a loud crash. Roman guards swarmed the quiet room, their armor clanking against the stone. The trap had finally snapped shut. Justin and 6 brave students were dragged from their studies without warning. Their quiet life of learning was ripped away in an instant. Rough hands forced iron chains around their wrists and ankles. Cold metal bit into their skin as they were pushed into the glaring sunlight. A terrifying march began through the crowded streets of the Roman Empire. They were no longer free thinkers, but prisoners stumbling toward a dark cell. The courtroom of Rusticus, the Roman prefect, was built to crush human hope. High stone walls made every footstep echo. There were no windows, only cold marble, and the harsh stare of armed guards. Rusticus sat high above them, a cold man holding the power of life and death. In this brutal room, a single careless word meant a painful end. The air was heavy with unspoken fear as Justin stood before the massive wooden bench. Blood stains from past trials marked the floor beneath their feet. It was a terrifying stage designed to make strong men break down. The Roman rules of questioning had nothing to do with finding the truth. Rusticus did not care what Justin believed in his heart. The empire only cared about blind obedience. The judge gave a simple, deadly order. The prisoners had to offer a sacrifice to the Roman gods immediately. The test was terribly simple. They only needed to drop a tiny pinch of sweet incense into a burning fire. That small action would prove they bowed to the emperor. But doing so meant denying Jesus completely. It was a twisted system where a tiny flake of dust sealed a man's doom. Justin looked up at the fierce judge and made his final choice. He calmly refused to bow to statues made of stone. Rusticus threatened them with merciless whipping and a painful death. Instead of panic, the Roman leader stared in profound shock. He was completely confused by a man totally unafraid of pain. That brave refusal set a standard that changed history. His willing martyrdom earned him the name Justin Martyr, but his death was not an ending. His written apologies and philosophical defense survived the fall of the empire. They became important books for the Christian Church, studied since the 2nd century, by using the language of his enemies to explain his faith. He built a bridge between deep thought and simple belief. His bold actions proved a person could be brilliant and still trust a higher power. This method focuses on truth and forever changed apologetics, giving future generations the tools to stand tall in hostile courtrooms. The brutal loss of their teacher sent a shockwave through the hidden community of believers in Rome. They lost their brightest voice, but instead of scattering in fear, ordinary workers and families found a fierce new resolve. If a great thinker could face death without blinking, they could keep their faith alive. The swift execution of Justin and his students left a deep scar on the Roman Empire. For families living in the 2nd century, his public martyrdom served as a brutal warning. The powerful state would not spare you just because you were smart or polite. Yet his philosophical defense gave ordinary Christian believers a new kind of armor. In quiet workshops and safe houses, they started using his exact arguments to protect their own families. This brave method focuses on reason and truth. It taught a whole generation of workers how to speak up and stand firm when the emperor's guards finally came knocking. The true weight of this history rests in a simple fading scroll addressed to a ruler who refused to listen. That ancient text became the foundation of apologetics, the ultimate proof of a man who traded his life to explain Jesus. We are left with the final image of Justin Martyr walking calmly toward the executioner's block. His mind was sharp, his spirit was unbroken, and his final breath on that cold stone floor proved that no sword could ever silence the truth.